Hello, and welcome to the Kingston Grammar School podcast. For any listeners who are newcomers to the podcast, Kingston Grammar School is an independent co-educational day school located in Kingston upon Thames, southwest London. With the school motto of work well and be happy ever present in all aspects of school life, Kingston Grammar School is one of the most successful co-educational schools in all of the UK. I'm your host, Shannon Delwish, and regardless of what brought you here or how you came to find us, I know that as one of our listeners, you will quickly start to feel more a part of the inclusive KGS community. We're really happy to have you. Now, last week, we featured an impassioned conversation between faculty and staff who are progressing the co-curriculum at KGS with an emphasis on equality, diversity, and inclusion, or EDI. But the next generation of thought leaders is also actively involved in this pioneering work. This episode features 4 remarkable students who are tackling these topics head-on through powerful assemblies, supportive clubs, and other initiatives that are contributing to make equality, diversity, and inclusion the rules of school.
I'm Dougie, I'm in the upper 6th, and I'm mainly doing work with the stand-up, speak-out work for gender equality in the school. It's important that men get involved with it to show that it's not just a women's issue, it's for everyone, as well as Pride Society.
Great.
Hi, I'm Sasha. I'm also in upper 6th, and I've also been working with Dougie on the gender equality stand-up, speak-out. Stand-up, speak-out is the name we gave to our campaign week at KGS, targeting unkind behaviour in school environments, whether that be physical or verbal or emotional, I guess. We worked with the senior leadership to make assemblies and presentations and form activities for a lot of the school. Stuff really started kicking off in schools last year around Sarah Everard, and also Everyone's Invited, bringing people's awareness. But I think for me, I've really valued having boys like Dougie and like Zane. It means a lot that they understand that it's not just a girl's issue, it's everyone's issue.
Amazing.
Hi, I'm Zane. I've been focusing mainly on more of a general approach to EDI and have been focusing on the well-being of students from minority groups. My turning point, as it were, to be passionate about these sort of things is when my eyes sort of opened up to the unequal treatment, especially of people of colour, especially in America. And after, seeing the media response to things such as George Floyd and Breonna Taylor's murder, I felt it was my responsibility, especially as an upper 6th and school captain, to understand that we as a school, as a collective, should stand up and speak out about these issues and be respectful of other people's differences. I think encouraging positive discussion is key, and also helping people educate themselves. We can do a certain amount of the work, but a student or an individual should be keen to educate themselves on key issues because they do affect everyone.
Yeah.
I'm Izzy, I'm in upper 6th, and for the last year and a half I've been focusing on stand-up, speak out, and I agree with Sasha. We started getting involved around the same time as Sabina Nessa and the Sarah Everard attacks. It was really sort of a trigger point of what got people talking about it, and especially all the girls. We were talking to each other and sharing experiences. So we went to senior leadership, we got involved, we started working on the PSHE programme.
Yeah, I learned so much more about these issues when I started following certain influencers on social media. And most of what I've learned has been through teaching myself because of interest in it from my own experiences, but also from my friends. So yeah, by sharing our experiences, I think it encourages people to go out and learn things themselves.
Right.
And I think also taking action, not just sort of chatting about it, but also if you see or hear someone saying something negative, actually call it out rather than just being a passive bystander. You do actually need to do something.
Can we just talk about, in particular, some of the specific projects that are either in the pipeline or that have just happened that you all have been involved in?
Along with a couple of other boys in the Pride Society, we delivered assemblies about LGBTQ plus History Month, because that's what February was. It was a great opportunity for us to talk about the history of people who have fought for our rights. Lots of people told me that it was an interesting assembly, and that makes me happy because if people are interested in it, then they may go away and they'll find out more themselves, and gave people a chance to talk about some of the things they've experienced which they might not have done before.
We did the Stand Up Speak Out campaign week at the beginning of February, and that was really beneficial because I think it drew attention to issues that have sort of been looming over everyone before, but in the same way as LGBTQ plus History Month, it sort of focuses the attention on a particular issue.
Right.
It has to start with the assembly or the PSHE lesson, and then people start talking.
Right.
Especially the sixth form assemblies that we made, they were quite hard-hitting, but the impact that they had, everyone was talking about them, and I think it brought attention, especially to those who were perhaps a bit unaware. It got them talking about it, and I think that was probably one of the most positive things we could do.
In those assemblies, were you doing kind of a lot of case studies?
Yeah, so we had this one slide where it was just testimony after testimony, and a lot of them were, not all of them, but some of them were quite intense and hard-hitting, and I think the consecutive of like 15, 20 testimony again and again really struck people.
Wow.
Yeah, and on my end, as school captains, we've been working on a diversity calendar because we feel it's important for students of all minorities to feel heard within the school, and for the school to structure a year surrounding, if it's key festivals or key months, events and celebrations. That was very key in setting up, future years to then lead on. Also, in the coming weeks, we're trying to work on a representation through media week, which focuses on the younger years being able to understand that the representation that is in media today has improved, but it's nowhere near what it should be in terms of mirroring the society we live in.
Right.
Been working especially with the library to add books. They're already doing an amazing job, but adding books that have stories with central characters of people of colour, those who are disabled, those who are part of the LGBTQ plus. And so I feel it's key that being put out there, students have their viewpoints widened.
Right.
And therefore that leads to education and respect.
Yeah, it's a really good point. Is there anything parents can do to help these conversations or be supportive of what the programs you're doing at KGS?
I think just continue the conversations you have at school. I mean, most of the things we do are put on the KGS bulletin, which parents are sent. So I think just bringing it up with your children and say, hey, what did you learn about in school this week? What do you think of this? Encouraging healthy discussions so they know it's okay to talk about it with their parents. Because if they're okay to talk about their parents, they'll be able to talk about it with their friends, with their peers, with their teachers. And then going forward into the future, they'll talk about it in the workplace. And overall, I think the aim is just to create a more positive, inclusive society.
There's quite often a generational divide between parents and their children. So yeah, by having these discussions with your children, it's a great way to make that divide less harsh.
And if the parents know that these issues are affecting their children, of which of course they are, they need to educate themselves and then encourage positive discussion and make sure that the child is being supported.
Yeah.
At home, me and my family talk about the news a lot.
Right.
And I think that's really beneficial for my younger sisters who now know a lot about what's going on in the world. I think that's really helped them understand like the big world events that are going on and sort of put things into perspective so that they're not terrified when they see one out of context headline or something.
Right. Yeah, it must feel like an overwhelming amount of pressure to be able to put that into context, the real world things that are going on. The last thing I'd want to ask is, what's your kind of grand plans for affecting change and inspiring kind of education in these areas moving forward?
For me, it's to make sure students know that with the right tools and facilities, they can create change. If they take a more activist approach, a more anti-discrimination approach, they are able to make the world a better place quite seriously.
Already, you can see the change that's happening in the school. Like in Pride Society, first years and second years, they're confident in what sexuality or what gender they might be.
Right.
When I was in first year, there weren't conversations like that happening with me or my friends. But I think it's really amazing to see everyone's talking so openly about these things. And yeah, I only hope that that continues in that way.
For me, I think it's just making sure that all students feel safe and comfortable within school. Like when I was younger, I'm bisexual, and I never would have dreamt about talking about my sexuality with my peers, let alone doing assemblies on it. Seeing the work that Dougie and Pride Society have been doing and seeing the kids lower down the school just feeling so open and confident really warms my heart. You can tell that they feel safe. You can extend that to Stand Up Speak Out as well, but you can see more people talking about it.
Yeah, because I guess the school seems like the world right now, but in the bigger picture, it's very small. But if you're all kind of going your own channels and bringing it with you, then it can change the world. Thank you, everyone. It's been great having you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
It's been lovely.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Kingston Grammar School podcast. If you are interested in learning more about the work being done by Dougie, Sasha, Zane, and Izzy in terms of EDI, and to keep abreast of upcoming events, assemblies, and important dates for your diaries, check out the KGS website at www.kgs.org.uk. There, you'll find up-to-date bulletins, brochures, policies, and reports. Next week, prepare to be captivated as we hear from KGS alumna Jo Blackshaw, who regales us with a detailed account of her rowing journey across the Atlantic and explains how a co-educational environment promotes equality both during school years and in the years that follow. We'd like to hear from you, dear listeners, so tell us what you are enjoying about the podcast and suggest topics which you'd like to learn more about. You can get in touch by emailing us at podcast@kgs.org.uk. There are so many places where you can access this podcast, so feel free to invite friends, colleagues, and family to tune in wherever they hang out, whether it's in the YouTube space, on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, or SoundCloud, to name just a few. We are searchable and findable on all of the podcast platforms, so there's no reason why, say, your cousin out there in Australia can't listen to us on Audible, or your daughter who's studying in Delaware can't listen on her Deezer app. Please tap that follow, download, or subscribe button so that you'll receive any episodes you haven't heard already. And rate and review the podcast if you haven't done that. It's super quick and super easy, and it helps our listeners to find us more quickly and easily. Special thanks to our guests in this episode, Dougie, Sasha, Zane, and Izzy. Thank you also to Allison Williams, Director of Marketing and Admissions at Kingston Grammar School. This has been an Applied Reality production produced by Shannon Vandermark, sound design by Alex Marcoux.